Mark Consuelos had always been a good sport, good enough, certainly to survive decades of soap opera plot twists, sudden shirtless scenes, and hosting a morning show in front of millions of caffeine-hungry viewers. But even he, with all his rehearsed cool and accidental charm, wasn't quite prepared for this Monday's guest, UFC legend Valentina "Bullet" Shevchenko. He knew she was coming, of course. The prep team had warned him. The producers had smiled in that slightly evil way they did when planning something physical. And Kelly, his wife, partner in banter, and co-host, had been suspiciously excited since last Thursday. But knowing Valentina Shevchenko is coming and experiencing Valentina Shevchenko in person are two very different things, much like reading about a thunderstorm versus standing outside holding a metal pole. When she walked onto the set, the air itself seemed to tighten, casual, calm, deadly, like a panther in designer athleisure. The audience erupted. Mark's eyebrows went instinctively higher, the universal male expression of, "Oh, I am outmatched," but smiling anyway because cameras exist. "Mark," Valentina said, shaking his hand firmly enough to remind him he had bones. "Ready to train?" Kelly's grin was wide enough to be seen from space. "Oh, he's very ready. It's been weeks since he's moved faster than a brisk walk to the refrigerator." Mark shot her a look. Traitor. But the segment had begun, and retreat was no longer an option. Somewhere in the distance, a producer yelled something like, "Roll graphics," and Mark wondered if he should have updated his will. Valentina demonstrated the basics: stance, guard, footwork. She moved with the kind of elegance that made everyone watching think, "I could do that." And then she added a slicing kick so fast it whistled. Mark flinched. Kelly cackled. The audience clapped. "Your turn," Valentina said. Mark obeyed because when Valentina Shevchenko tells you to do something, you just do it. He squared up. He lifted his hands. He tried to look intimidating, but unfortunately he looked more like a dad preparing to give advice about dating. "Loosen your shoulders," she coached. Mark tried. More. He tried harder. More. At this point, Mark appeared to be melting. Then Valentina stepped close, very close, to adjust his elbows, his hips, his stance. For a brief moment, Mark forgot he was on television. He forgot the cameras. He forgot that the floor manager with the headset was judging his posture. He forgot everything except the fact that a world-class fighter was practically wrapped around him like a martial arts instruction manual. He cleared his throat. "Is it getting warm in here?" Kelly snorted. "It's called exercise, honey." Valentina dipped into a demonstration of clinch work, placing her arm around Mark's neck, guiding his movement with effortless control. Mark, to his credit, attempted to move with equal grace. Instead, he looked like someone trying to exit a too-small subway seat without touching anyone. "Relax," Valentina said. "That's impossible," Mark answered. The audience roared. Next up was the takedown demonstration. Mark's internal monologue sounded like, "Takedown? Takedown?" This was not in the script, but it was far too late. Valentina explained calmly, like a kindergarten teacher describing finger painting. "First, I wrap the arm. Then I shift the weight. Then, she moved lightly, swiftly, with the inevitability of gravity itself." Mark was suddenly, unmistakably horizontal. Kelly applauded. "Wow. Look at that form, Mark. I haven't seen you on your back like that since." Kelly. What she was about to say will remain a mystery, but the audience had already filled in the blanks. Even Valentina cracked a smile. Mark popped back up, refusing to let dignity die without a fight. "Okay," he said, panting slightly. "Maybe I should try that on you?" Valentina raised one eyebrow. "You can try," the crowd oohed. Mark considered this for a solid 3 seconds, then shook his head. "Nope, never mind. I enjoy being alive." The segment moved on to pad work. Valentina held them like they were made of steel. Mark threw punches. Sort of. Imagine a very handsome man trying very hard not to break his manicure. That was the energy. "That's it," Kelly encouraged. "Hit it like it's the laundry basket you pretend you don't see." Mark ignored her. Or tried to. But Kelly's commentary was half the fun, and she was warming up. When Valentina had Mark kick the pads, he actually looked decent. Balance, power, a hint of confidence. For a moment, he even felt like a coiled spring of athletic potential. A warrior. A man capable of. Wham! His foot hit the pad like thunder. "Yes," he shouted. Valentina nodded politely, not bad. Kelly added, look at him. He's glowing. This is the most action he's had in weeks. The audience screamed with laughter. Mark collapsed forward, bracing his hands on his knees, trying not to giggle mid-exertion. I'm right here, he reminded her. That's why it's funny. Valentina, watching their banter, smiled with the knowing patience of someone who has seen many couples roast each other for sport. You did well, she told Mark. He straightened up, slightly out of breath. Thank you, it was intense. How intense? Kelly teased. Mark wiped imaginary sweat from his brow. Let's just say this is the most action I've had in weeks. The studio erupted. The joke was out. The moment was immortal. Somewhere, a producer whispered triumphantly, we're going viral. The segment wrapped with selfies, hugs, and Mark trying to look relaxed even though his muscles were already preparing to file a complaint. Valentina waved, graceful as ever, and exited the set, leaving behind a trail of awe and one slightly rattled morning show host. As soon as she was gone, Mark slumped into his chair. Kelly leaned over, patting his shoulder. You okay, champ? Define okay, he mumbled. She kissed his cheek. You survived, and you looked adorable doing it. Mark sighed theatrically. I need ice. For what? Everything. She laughed, and he couldn't help laughing too. Sure, he might not be ready for the octagon anytime soon, but he was more than ready for the comedic chaos of live TV, and for being roasted by his wife in front of America. And somewhere backstage, Valentina Shevchenko probably shook her head with amused affection, thinking, actors. But one thing was certain. It was indeed the most action he'd had in weeks.